My name is Hadley Bennett, 29 years old, and 1 hour ago I buried my grandfather in Key West. The service had just ended. I was walking across the church parking lot, still holding the tiny key he secretly pressed into my hand 3 months earlier, right when he started getting weak. Everyone said it was just old age. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hadley. It's your grandfather's lawyer, his oldest friend. I received an envelope he mailed the day before he died. Whatever's inside changes everything. Get to my office on Duval Street right now. Come alone. Do not tell your parents or your brother. His voice was shaking. I drove straight there. 10 minutes later, I reached the building. The office was almost dark, the door cracked open, swaying in the breeze. I pushed it. Inside, my younger brother had the lawyer slammed against the wall, fist twisted in his collar, growling, "Give me the new will, old man, now." The lawyer's terrified eyes found mine across the room. The second my brother spun toward me, the lawyer shoved something hard into my jacket pocket and mouthed a single word I'll never forget: "Run." My blood turned to ice. My own flesh and blood was threatening the one man my grandfather trusted most in this world. Whatever they were hiding, they were ready to hurt anyone to keep it buried. If you're watching this right now, drop your city and the exact time in the comments. I need to know who's stepping into this nightmare with me, because what comes next will make your skin crawl. I left the lawyer's office and drove straight to the family mansion on Bahamas Avenue, hands shaking on the wheel the entire 6 miles. My parents and Nolan had already come home from the reception, saying they needed rest. The house sat dark except for the porch light. I parked 2 doors down, killed the engine, and waited until every window went black. Only then did I slip through the side gate and let myself in through the kitchen door I'd left unlocked that morning. The marble floor was cold under my bare feet as I climbed the back staircase, avoiding the 3rd step that always creaked. My grandfather's bedroom door was closed. I eased it open, slid inside, and locked it behind me. The familiar scent of salt air and his old cedar cologne hit me like a punch. I didn't turn on the overhead light. Just the small lamp on his nightstand. The painting of his first charter boat still hung slightly crooked. I lifted it off the wall. The safe was exactly where he'd shown me years ago, back when he joked it was for pirate treasure. I inserted the tiny brass key. The dial turned with a soft click. Inside sat one thick manila envelope and nothing else. I carried it to his bed, sat down, and opened the metal clasp. The top sheet was a single page in his handwriting, dated 11 days before he died. "My dearest Hadley, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. For 11 months, someone in this house has been replacing my heart medication with pills that slowly destroyed me. I noticed the difference in taste first, then the dizziness, then the chest pain that never quite went away. I pretended to swallow what they handed me every morning, and night palmed the tablets and started driving to a private cardiologist in Miami under the excuse of business meetings. The blood tests came back showing digoxin toxicity 4 times above therapeutic level, enough to kill an elephant, let alone an 83-year-old man. I saved one of the fake bottles. It's in the plastic bag behind this letter. 2 weeks ago, I met a notary on the mainland and executed a new will. You inherit 78% of the entire estate, the 42 charter vessels, the 3 docks, the commercial properties, the brokerage accounts, everything. Your parents are excluded entirely. I discovered the second mortgages they took against the company without telling me. Nolan and Quinn each receive 5% in trust, no more. I wanted to confront them, but I was afraid they'd finish the job faster. So I stayed quiet and planned. I'm sorry I'm leaving you to carry this alone. You were always the only one who truly loved the ocean the way I did. Protect it for me. All my love, Grandpa. I read it 3 times before the words stopped blurring. Behind the letter were 30 pages, the notarized will, with filing stamps, lab reports on letterhead from Jackson Memorial chain of custody forms, and the sealed evidence bag containing the counterfeit pill bottle. Everything was dated, signed, witnessed and initialed in triplicate. Ironclad. I pressed the papers to my chest and felt the room tilt. The same hands that used to tuck me in when I was 5, the same voices that sang happy birthday every July had been feeding him poison for almost a year, believing his death would hand them the keys to an empire. They never imagined he'd rewrite the rules while they were counting the days. I sat there on his bed until the first hint of dawn crept through the shutters, holding the proof that the people downstairs were strangers wearing the faces of my family. The house turned into a cage. My father, Gregory, started asking the same question every morning over coffee. "Any strange calls lately, sweetheart?" His smile never reached his eyes. My mother, Evelyn, suddenly cooked all my favorite meals, watching every bite. I took her gaze flicking to my phone whenever it buzzed. Nolan lingered outside my bedroom door until the hallway lights went out, his shadow visible under the gap. I stopped sleeping. I knew I had to get out, but I needed proof they couldn't explain away. I texted Lane Fletcher, my best friend since freshman year, at the only person I still trusted. He now ran live sound for concerts up in Miami. We agreed to meet at the tiny Cuban coffee shop on the corner of Simonton and Angela, the one with the cracked plastic tables out back. I got there first, ordered 2 cortaditos, and waited. Lane walked in wearing a black hoodie despite the heat, slid into the chair across from me, and didn't waste words. "Show me." I slid my phone across the table. I'd photographed every page from the safe the night before. He scrolled in silence, jaw tightening with each swipe. When he finished, he looked up. "Tonight, they're taking the big sport fisher out for a memorial sunset cruise. Whole family. House will be empty for at least 5 hours. We go in at 9. We parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest, cutting through backyards until we reached the gate behind the pool." Lane had a cheap magnetic key fob cloner. The garage side door clicked open in seconds. Inside smelled of boat fuel and chlorine. We moved fast. He took my father's office first. The bottom drawer of the mahogany desk was locked, but a flathead screwdriver fixed that. Inside, a folder labeled medical supplies, bank transfer receipts from an account in my mother's maiden name to a lab in Homestead, Florida, 48 miles north on the mainland. Each receipt listed digoxin 0.25 micrograms tablets, no imprint. Handwritten notes in my mother's neat cursive increase by 0.25 micrograms week starting month 8. My stomach turned. Lane photographed everything with his phone on silent, then moved to the kitchen island where Nolan had left his old iPhone charging. Face ID was still set to my brother's face, but the battery was dead. Lane plugged it into a laptop he carried in his backpack, ran a quick bypass, and opened the Messages app. One group chat named Future had 427 unread messages. He scrolled to the beginning, 11 months back. Evelyn. He complained the pills taste different today. Nolan told him it's a new generic. He bought it. Gregory good. Lab confirmed the new batch will push him over the edge in 6-8 weeks. Evelyn. Once the doctor signs the certificate, the banks release the collateral. We're clear. Nolan, 5.2 million liquid by end of quarter. We disappear if we have to. Gregory sent a photo 2 weeks ago, a black duffel bag stuffed with cash, on the office desk, caption insurance policy. Lane's face went white. He backed up the entire thread to an encrypted drive, then wiped any trace we'd been there. We slipped out the same way we came in, locking the door behind us. Standing under the streetlight on Angela Street, he handed me the drive. "They really did it," he said, voice low. "And they think they're about to be rich." I stared at the tiny piece of plastic in my palm, feeling the ground shift under me again. "They have no idea the money is already gone from their reach?" I whispered. Lane nodded once. "Then let's make sure they find out the hard way." Lane didn't want to take any chances with the house cameras, so he waited until the motion sensors clicked off at 10:42 p.m. He walked the 4 blocks from where we'd parked, dressed in black, ball cap low, moving like another tourist who'd had one too many margaritas. I watched from the rental car, heart hammering. 37 seconds later, he was under Nolan's lifted black F-150. He pressed the tiny, voice-activated recorder military-grade no lights, 48-hour battery against the frame rail above the rear axle. Magnet snapped it in place. He was back in the passenger seat before the next car passed. We drove 1 block closer, parked under the drooping branches of a sea grape tree on Elizabeth Street, killed the engine, and slipped in wireless earpieces. The feed came alive instantly, faint road noise, then the low rumble of the truck pulling out for the marina. We stayed silent. The recorder caught everything perfectly. At 11:51 p.m., the truck rolled back through the gate. Doors opened, 3 sets of footsteps on gravel, the metallic clank of the tailgate dropping. Then voices, close and unguarded, because they thought the garage door hid them from the world. My mother spoke first, heels clicking on concrete. "She's been weird since the lawyer thing. I found her phone on the counter earlier. She'd deleted the call log, but I saw the Duval Street prefix." My father's reply was calm glassware clinking as he poured himself something strong. "She can delete whatever she wants. The death certificate is filed. Congestive heart failure due to chronic atrial fibrillation. Signed, sealed, and already in the courthouse system. 10 business days and the probate judge releases the funds." Nolan snorted, keys jangling as he tossed them on the workbench. "She thinks she's smart. Always did. Grandpa let her steer the boats when she was still in high school, flew her to every boat show from Fort Lauderdale to Annapolis. Meanwhile, I was cleaning barnacles off hulls for minimum wage. He never saw me. Mother again, softer, almost proud. That's why we started the switch 11 months ago. Slow, steady, impossible to trace. The lab in Homestead even removed the imprint so the pills looked identical. He never suspected his own family. Father cut in voice, dropping to a whisper but still perfectly clear through the mic. 5.2 million hits the main account the moment probate clears. We pay the bank, sell the fleet to the highest bidder, and we're on a plane south before the ink dries. Hadley gets whatever scraps the creditors leave, which will be nothing." A pause. Ice cubes again. Nolan closer to the truck now, almost laughing. "She'll stand there with that sad face while we're sipping drinks on a beachfront property she'll never see. Grandpa's little princess finally learns what the real world costs." Mother's heels clicked toward the house door. "Stop gloating and get some sleep. We've got the memorial toast tomorrow night. Act normal." The interior door shut. Silence returned except for distant tree frogs. Lane pulled his earpiece out slowly, eyes fixed on the dark house. "They just handed us the entire case on a silver platter. Time-stamped GPS locked, 3 voices confessing to premeditated murder for hire." I stared at my trembling hands. They toasted to killing him like it was closing a business deal. Lane started the car. "Then we're about to bankrupt that deal permanently." The morning of the formal will reading arrived clear and hot. First State Bank of the Florida Keys had reserved its largest conference room on the 2nd floor overlooking Duval. More than 70 people filled the seats, cousins I hadn't seen in years, captains who'd worked for Grandpa since the 80s, local reporters smelling blood, even the Monroe County medical examiner in the back row. My parents and Nolan took the front row center, dressed like they were attending a victory party. Mother in pearls, father in his navy blazer with the family crest. Nolan in sunglasses he refused to remove indoors. They smiled at everyone, accepting condolences with practiced grace. I sat 3 rows behind them, Lane beside me in a borrowed suit, laptop bag at his feet. Thomas Vaughn, looking 10 years older than the last time I saw him, stood at the podium. Dark circles ringed his eyes. His hands trembled as he opened the leather folder. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to read the last will and testament of James Bennett, executed and notarized exactly 14 days before his passing." He began reading the standard clauses. Then he reached the dispositive provisions. Article 7. To my son Gregory Bennett and his wife Evelyn, I leave the sum of $1 each in recognition of the substantial inter vivos gifts already made and the outstanding liabilities they have incurred against company assets without my consent. Gasps rippled through the room. My father half rose from his chair, face flushing crimson. Article 8. To my grandson Nolan Bennett and granddaughter Quinn Bennett, I leave 5% of the residue each to be held in trust until age 35. Nolan ripped off his sunglasses, mouth open. Article 9. The remaining 78% of my estate, including but not limited to the charter fleet commercial docks, brokerage accounts, and all real property, I devise and bequeath, in fee simple absolute, to my granddaughter Hadley Marie Bennett. The projector screen behind Vaughn suddenly lit up white. Lane had already breached the bank's guest Wi-Fi and taken control of the AV system. The lights dimmed automatically. My mother's voice filled the room, recorded 6 nights earlier. She's been weird since the lawyer thing. Once the doctor signs the certificate, the banks release the collateral. Then my father, $5.2 million, hits the account the moment probate clears. We list the fleet and disappear. Nolan's voice, next cold and laughing. She'll stand there with that sad face while we're sipping drinks on a beachfront property she'll never see. Every text message from the future chat appeared on screen in order dates, and time stamped, ending with the photo of the cash-filled duffel. The room exploded. Reporters stood on chairs for better angles. Phones rose like a forest of black mirrors. 2 uniformed deputies moved toward the front row. My father shouted over the chaos, pointing at Vaughn, "This is fraud. That will was signed under duress." Nolan bolted from his seat, shoving past knees and handbags, heading straight for me. "You bitch! You did this!" Security intercepted him 6 feet away. Mother collapsed sideways into the aisle, pearls scattering across the carpet, sobbing. "We only wanted what was ours." Vaughn didn't flinch. He simply continued reading the final clause Grandpa had added in his own handwriting. "And to anyone who contests this, will I leave nothing, and I direct my executor to defend it with every dollar necessary." The screen looped the evidence once more, volume louder, as deputies cuffed my father, mother, and brother right there in front of the cameras. Nolan screamed my name the entire way out, veins bulging in his neck. I stayed seated until the room emptied, the weight of 78% of everything Grandpa built now resting squarely on my shoulders, and the knowledge that the 3 people who should have loved me most had valued money more than his life. The bank reading turned into front-page news across the Keys by sunset. My parents and Nolan were released on signature bonds that same afternoon because Florida treats first-degree murder as a capital offense, and the state attorney wanted time to file formal charges. They walked out of the courthouse smiling for the cameras, claiming the recording was doctored and the will was forged under coercion. They went straight home, packed 3 duffels, and by midnight the fastest boat in the fleet, the 65-foot Viking convertible named Last Dollar, was gone from its slip. The Coast Guard logged it heading southeast at 38 knots. Destination Bimini, then anywhere with no extradition. They never saw us coming. I had called the FBI Miami field office the night Lane pulled the audio. Special Agent Carla Reyes took my statement, listened to every file, and asked only one question. "Can you get them to talk about the money one more time on U.S. soil?" I told her I could. Lane spoofed a text from Douglas Mercer, Grandpa's former CFO, who had already flipped and was in protective custody. The message read, "Cash is ready. 5.2 wired to offshore, but I can only release in person. Dock 19:04 a.m. Come alone, or the deal dies." My father replied in under 2 minutes, "On our way." Dock 19 sits at the end of a private peninsula owned by the estate, gated, no public access, lit only by sodium security lamps. Agent Reyes had 6 agents in plain clothes hiding among the stacked shipping containers and pilings. Lane and I watched from a shrimp boat, 2 slips over night vision binoculars pressed to our faces. At 3:57 a.m., the Viking eased in, running lights off, engines throttled down to whisper. My father killed the diesels and tossed lines to the empty dock. All three stepped off carrying heavy duffels and a single rolling suitcase. Nolan scanned the darkness with a flashlight. Mother clutched her purse like a life jacket. Douglas Mercer's voice came from the shadows near the fuel pumps, exactly where Reyes had placed a hidden agent using Mercer's recorded greeting as a lure. "Over here. Money's in the office." They walked straight into the kill box. Father spoke first, voice echoing off the metal containers. 5.2 in hundreds, right? "We're out of here by sunrise." The agent answered with Mercer's exact cadence. "Cash is inside. Let's move." Nolan dropped his bag, stretched. "Once we're clear of the reef, Hadley can have the scraps. She'll be lucky to keep one leaky skiff." Mother laughed nervously. She always thought she was special. Time she learned different. Father set the suitcase on the dock, popped it open. Stacks of blank paper wrapped to look like cash, standard sting prop. "Let's count it and go." That was the moment the floodlights snapped on. 12 FBI agents in raid jackets stepped out with weapons drawn. Federal agents, hands in the air. My mother screamed. Nolan spun, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Father froze, mouth open. Reyes walked forward, reading from a card. "Gregory Bennett. Evelyn Bennett. Nolan Bennett. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, wire fraud, and interstate flight to avoid prosecution. You have the right to remain silent." Nolan lunged for the boat rail. 2 agents tackled him face first onto the teak deck. Mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing, clutching at Nolan's shirt. "Don't say anything, baby, don't say anything." Father just stared at the fake money realization finally hitting. He changed it. He actually changed everything. Handcuffs clicked. The agents bagged the duffels as evidence of intent to flee. Body cams and dock cameras recorded every second. Nolan, bleeding from the lip where he'd hit the deck, looked straight toward the shrimp boat and saw me standing under the light. "You set us up," he spat. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The microphones caught his confession perfectly. By sunrise, the Viking was impounded. The 3 of them were on a prisoner transport to the federal detention center in Miami, and the story led every local and national newscast. They never made it to the Bahamas. They never touched a single dollar. The federal courthouse in Miami rose like a concrete fortress against the August sky. Inside courtroom 12A, the air conditioning hummed loud enough to drown nervous coughs. Jury selection had taken 4 full days. Every potential juror was asked if they'd ever lost a grandparent to illness and whether money had ever divided their family. 3 were excused for tears alone. Opening statements began on a Monday. Assistant U.S. Attorney Maria Delgado wore a navy suit and spoke without notes. She told the 12 jurors and 4 alternates that this wasn't a whodunit. It was a how long and how coldly. She laid out the timeline on a board: 11 months of switched pills, forged lab orders, celebratory texts about cash they believed was already theirs. Defense counsel, 3 high-priced attorneys in charcoal suits, argued tragic misunderstanding and elder paranoia. They flashed childhood photos of me on the boats with Grandpa, claiming I had manipulated a dying man. The jury stayed stone-faced. I was the first witness called. Delgado walked me through every exhibit slowly: the safe letter, the digoxin blood reports, the homestead pharmacy receipts, the group chat screenshots, the garage recording, the dock sting video. Each document appeared on the 2 giant screens in perfect clarity. When the garage audio played my parents and brother laughing about natural causes several days away, the courtroom went completely silent except for the recording itself. Cross-examination lasted 3 hours. The lead defense lawyer tried to rattle me with questions about my sudden wealth and whether I felt guilty inheriting everything. I answered the same way each time: I feel guilty that the people who raised me valued money more than his life. My father took the stand next. He wore a borrowed suit 2 sizes too big, orange jail scrubs visible at the collar. He claimed Grandpa had sundowning dementia and that I had coerced him into signing the new will during a hospital visit. Delgado destroyed him on cross with the notary's testimony and hospital visitor logs showing I was never alone with Grandpa after the will was signed. Mother cried through her entire testimony, mascara streaking, insisting she only wanted to protect the company from bankruptcy. The jury watched the same woman on the dock recording saying she'll be lucky to keep one leaky skiff and stopped buying the tears. Nolan refused to testify. His lawyer moved to suppress all recordings as illegal wiretaps. Judge Morales denied the motion in a 23-page order citing exigent circumstances and one-party consent. The evidence stayed in. Closing arguments lasted one day. Delgado ended with a single photograph projected behind her grandpa and me on the flying bridge the day I got my captain's license, both of us sunburned and laughing. They murdered him for an inheritance they never earned and never received, she said quietly. Make sure they never profit from it. The jury deliberated 4 hours and 12 minutes. Guilty on every count first-degree murder, with pecuniary gain conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated manslaughter of an elderly person over 65 wire fraud money laundering. Because the government elected not to seek death, Florida statute mandated one sentence and one sentence only. Judge Elena Morales looked at each defendant in turn. Gregory Bennett, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Evelyn Bennett, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Nolan Bennett, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Quinn sat in the last row, granted immunity for her testimony about overhearing the plan, but never reporting it. The judge revoked her 5% trust in its entirety. Every cent was redirected to a victim restitution fund. As the marshals placed cuffs, Nolan turned toward the gallery. His eyes found mine across the courtroom. For a second, the hatred cracked and something raw, regret, maybe fear, flickered. Then the mask slammed back down. He mouthed a single word I didn't need to hear to understand. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked out without looking back. The doors closed behind me with a heavy thud that sounded exactly like final. I stood alone in front of Grandpa's grave at Key West Cemetery on a quiet Thursday morning. The headstone was simple gray granite. James Bennett, 1939, 2024, Keeper of the Sea. A light breeze carried the smell of salt and frangipani across the rows of white markers. I laid a bouquet of sunflowers at the base, his favorite. 2 years earlier, I had legally changed my name to Hadley Marie Cole, my mother's maiden name, before she married into the Bennett family. The court clerk in Monroe County didn't even blink. The paperwork was filed the same week the prison sentences became final. The name Bennett no longer belonged to me. The fleet still runs 42 boats, but now every captain is on salary. Every crew member gets health insurance, and profits above operating costs go straight into the James Bennett Medical Scholarship Fund. 58 full-ride scholarships have already been awarded to first-generation college students studying cardiology or geriatric medicine, kids who grew up on food stamps but scored perfect on their MCATs. I read every application myself. Quinn tried to reach me once 6 months after sentencing, asking if she could have something to remember Grandpa by. I sent back a single postcard of the cemetery with the words, "You already got your memory written on the back." She never wrote again. Lane moved to Nashville to mix live records for country acts, but he still flies down every February for the scholarship ceremony. We drink Cuban coffee on the dock at sunrise, and don't talk about the trial. Sometimes tourists ask why the biggest charter company in the Keys is run by a 29-year-old woman with no family name on the signs. I tell them the truth: the man who built it wanted the ocean to stay open to everyone, not locked behind greed. I knelt, brushed a little sand off the stone, and spoke the words I'd carried for 2 years. I kept my promise, Grandpa. Not one penny of yours ever reached their hands. The company is healthy, the boats are maintained, and every kid we put through med school carries your name on their degree. They'll save lives. You never got to live. I stood up, turned my back to the grave, and walked down the shell path toward the gate. The sun was warm on my face, the same sun that had warmed his every morning he spent on the water. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the promise you keep when everyone else breaks theirs. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and final. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money at all. It's knowing you did the one who chose truth when lies would have been easier. That's the legacy he left me, and the only one I'll ever need.